Welcome to another edition of the Coach's Corner with Mark and myself this time. We're going to get straight into your questions. So, without further ado, Andy Pollock says, I'm doing my first 70.3 this summer and plan to do a full Ironman next year. You've talked about the importance of taking some time off at the end of the season. After that break, is there best way to pace building up to the Ironman distance? Should I build up the distance right away and then maintain, build gradually over the course of the year, or train at lower distances and only build up right close to the race? Well, what you're talking about here is your broad season plan, or an annual training plan as they call it on Training Peaks. Basically, it's how your whole year is going to look. And you do need to think quite carefully about this, and I'm glad you're asking this now and not waiting until, when you're halfway through your off season.
Exactly.
To decide, let me plan my year ahead.
Yeah, it is really important, as you've mentioned about the break, to take a break. You can't just hold this optimal level of fitness all year round. You do need to factor in a break, and pretty much every pro that you see out there will take an end of season break, sometimes even a couple of times during the season. So yeah, do plan a break in, normally after that peak race of the year, but then also think about that peak race and build up to it incrementally throughout the year.
Yeah, you need to have an idea of how long it's going to take you to build to that peak race, and then work backwards from your race from there. So that's where you end your off season, as it were. So for an Ironman, you might be looking at 5 months, maybe 6 months of building up so you can get the mileage in and get the strength before the race comes. So look at when that race is, go 6 months back, maybe add another month or so to just get the legs turning and warming up. And before that is where you want to end your off season. So that's a broad idea. Obviously, if you have more races, if you have a 70.3 somewhere in there, you're going to do the same again and work maybe 3 months back from a 70.3 and end your off season there, etc. So it's a broad season plan. You need to obviously consult your coach on this. This is not something that you should just be sucking out your thumb to do, but it is important that you have a plan for the year and you don't just go out the door and do what you can do and think, okay, now the race is getting pretty near, it's time for me to ramp it up.
And it's worth pointing out, obviously, not all of us are literally building up to one race. You might have some other races throughout the year or some intermediate goals, I guess you could call them. And so factor those in as well. But obviously, as I've said, you will likely only have 1 or 2 races in the year that you're really focusing on and wanting to peak for. So just bear that in mind. And then that real focus towards that peak race should only happen sort of in the last 12 to 16 weeks leading up to that.
Exactly.
Nice one. All right, really good question. Next one, I like this one. Nice and simple from Wayne. I'm starting out, should I get an indoor trainer and should it be smart?
Yeah, pertinent question, because we do get this quite a lot. Indoor trainers range from very, very cheap and easy to use. You just put your bike on and go. But those ones generally feel awful. So is it worth spending that money to get a smart trainer?
Well, this is interesting because when I started out training, and I'm sure you the same, James, an indoor trainer was very, very rudimentary and, as you said, not that enjoyable, which is why many of us for years avoided indoor training full stop. And I would go out in all kinds of horrific weather, literally to avoid indoor training. But now you'd be hard pushed to find anyone that doesn't use indoor training as part of their training.
Yeah, trainers have improved so much that you can really get a feel for the road. It really feels natural. There's those old trainers, and still the really cheap ones that are wheel on are kind of, it feels like you're pedaling through syrup. There's no flow or anything, and it feels like you're really grinding. It's not a lot of fun, and we forgive you if you don't ever want to get on one of those. But if you try one of these new direct drive fancy smart trainers and you hook it up to something like Zwift, you'll be amazed at how much it feels like the real world. Then you throw in the challenges of Zwift, like races and riding with other people, and suddenly it becomes quite a lot of fun. You might actually find yourself choosing to stay indoors when the weather outside is not that bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there, saying how the older trainers or these more simple trainers, dumb trainers, etc., feel like you're riding through syrup. The new ones, I mean, it's hard to tell the difference, which makes it more appealing because it feels the same as riding outdoors to a degree. So you don't feel like you're trading anything off by going indoors, and the numbers that you will be putting out on the indoor trainer are more or less the same. So
to answer your question, yes, you absolutely should get an indoor trainer. It helps you avoid missing sessions because of weather or because of external factors, they're also very time efficient. You can hop on and get a solid hour session in with no kind of preparation beforehand and no cleaning up afterwards, really. So it's very time efficient. You should definitely get one, and if you are going to get one and you can afford it, you should absolutely get a smart trainer. They're so worth it.
And I'm very conscious this sounds like a sales pitch, but this is purely coming from some converted athletes here that used to work.
Both of us swore off it, and both of us would train in any weather rather than sit on that indoor trainer. Having said that though, I'm going to say one caveat at the end of this. You should still go out in the weather occasionally. Your race might be in the rain and you don't want to experience rain for the first time on your bike on race day. In fact, you don't want to experience anything for the first time on race day. So get out there, make sure you're comfortable cornering and stuff. Those things you can't train on an indoor trainer.
Yeah, very, very valid point. Next question from JJam. He said, do you keep your normal run cadence when doing LSD? I think he means long steady runs or long steady distance, or it should be lower. This is a really good question. I'm actually going to throw this to you because I think I've got my own input on this, and be interested to hear what you say.
Well, ideally, you would keep your same run cadence, the same steps per minute all the time for all your sessions, for all your paces, but in the real world, that doesn't really happen. So say you ran 180 steps per minute on your steady tempo run. If you slow down to a long, slow distance, you will probably see some decrease in your cadence. That's normal. What you don't want is that really to slow down. So you probably only want to look at 2 or 3%. If you are normally running your tempo runs at 180 steps per minute, you don't want to drop that below maybe 170 steps per minute on your long, slow distance, because what's happening there is you're actually changing the muscle groups. You turn it into a long loping stride, and you're far better off taking more steps shorter than long loping strides that are less efficient. Essentially, if your foot goes too far in front of your body, you then got a braking effect. It's slowing you down, it's less efficient. So you want to keep it efficient, and a way to do this is to keep an eye on your cadence if you are one of those guys who starts loping as you get tired, and make sure it doesn't fall below a certain level. Having said that though, and I'm going to say, don't watch your cadence. Unless you really feel like this is an issue and you are a real bad loper, and a lot of people talk to you and go, wow, you really take big steps when you're running, you probably are already settled into the natural stride rate that's right for you. It's not something that you need to actively work on too much unless you are really at one of the extremes of cadence. Basically, if you're extremely fast cadence and you're taking tiny little steps and running like a mouse, you might be looking at lengthening your stride. And if you're taking these long loping strides, you also might be worth bringing that back a bit and taking shorter steps. Other than that, just stick to what comes naturally.
Totally agree with you. And also to add to that, when you're doing these longer steady runs, I typically tend to go off-road for those, and I go over varied terrain, hills, mud and all sorts. Whereas when I do my faster intervals or during a race, I tend to do that on the flat, on tarmac, on a nice smooth terrain. And that is going to affect your cadence as well. So don't get too hung up, as James said, on the cadence. I see quite a big range in my cadence if I do actually analyze it, which I rarely do. I tend to just go out there and enjoy it.
This might be one of those cases of all these fancy new gadgets we have giving us too much data.
Well, yeah, I think they're good and interesting just to occasionally dip into, check where you're at. But unless you really knowingly have an issue, then
don't become obsessed with it.
Yeah.
On to our next question, and this is from CHR. Hi, do you think you may be able to produce something on initiating running with kids? I have 2 girls, 11 and 12, and with school holidays coming, would love some tips on gradually introducing them to running with a view to maintaining once school starts again. Yeah, this is an interesting one. All for getting your kids into sport. Obviously, you don't want to push them too much. I think that's a fair answer. But at the same time, you want to make sure they just enjoy it. And particularly during the school holidays, it should be fun. Yeah, absolutely. You don't want school holidays to turn into boot camp where you're turfing out of bed before breakfast in the morning to run a few miles. It doesn't want to feel like boot camp. They need to enjoy it. But some ideas on maybe setting a goal for them for the summer holidays, and you know, you might pick a loop near your house, and you can run around the loop with them, and then suggest to them that maybe by the end of the summer, let's aim for a goal or a time, or we're going to do this as fast as we can, and then train for it. So suggest to them that maybe we should go and run some hills so that we're stronger for our attempt at this loop that we're going to run at the end of the summer, or run some sprints because that's going to make us faster for this loop we're going to attempt at the end of the summer. All these kinds of ideas will really get them enthusiastic about the challenge and the enjoyment of the running, rather than just going to them, right, this is training, you're going to do some work, let's go. Before you're allowed any ice cream, you have to run X number of miles.
I think that's the important thing. Probably remove the training emphasis from it and just make it fun. You can do lots of games that is in a roundabout way going to make them fitter and get them running and achieving more. Also, please do not forget that your children at these sort of ages are growing. They're conditioning themselves slowly over time. They're not ready to suddenly start running 5+ kilometers at that sort of age. So do just build up to it gradually, and that may mean doing a bit of a run walk. So just going for a walk with your kids and then potentially just throwing the odd little run in for fun. So just be really mindful of that. I think that's really important just to reiterate.
Yeah, I would sum it up by saying set a goal that they buy into, preferably, make it fun, and finally, do it with them. This is not a drill sergeant thing where you stand on the sidelines and go run. You should absolutely do it with them. They'll be far more interested in doing it, and you might just find by the end of the summer your kids are runners.
And also, just great fun for your own training.
Absolutely,
maybe mix this up, like you start your own run with them, or you come back and you pick them up for the end. It can be really fun. I know a lot of people that's actually spurred them on to do their longer runs because they know they're going to finish with their kids. So yeah,
the kids waiting for them at home to finish that last mile with them or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a fun way to motivate yourself too, as well as them.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks ever so much to everyone for the questions. Please do keep them coming in, and you may get featured on the next Coach's Corner. If you enjoyed today's video, please do give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe down below.